UCF is making roster moves this offseason. Who's back? Who's coming in? It's time to talk about it.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. Turn us on, turn us up, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend, James Duncan, UCF sports commentator extraordinaire. Talk a little UCF football here on a Thursday. Feels like a Friday, James. It feels like a Friday to you? It feels like a Friday to me. On today's show, we're going to talk about the return of Waden Charles, the exit of Tavin Jackson, and then we're going to get into some other recruiting updates. We got a lot of good stuff for you guys here today, so hang with us as we work through it. Let's start at the top here. Good news for the Knights. Waden Charles will return to UCF next season under Scott Frost. James, we got the skinny on a lot of stuff. I want to give you the floor, my friend, to talk about Waden Charles returns and what it means for the Knights. You got to build stability and getting good talent to return, but guys who know your system and are bought in and can carry the culture that you're trying to establish. Very important. Waden Charles, definitely one of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially down the stretch of this year, Waden was one of like the guys for the Knights. Consistently was getting receptions all the way through the game throughout your last couple of games there. And, you know, against number 11 BYU, had 4 receptions for 50 yards. But on the year as a freshman, having 26 receptions for 290 yards is really solid. Especially when you're in a pretty packed room at wide receiver with a lot of experienced guys coming from the portal. Starting as a true freshman is insane. And so he's definitely one of the guys that you needed to retain. You know, I would say one of the guys that he got brought in with, Carl Jenkins Jr., is another guy you'd like to retain. But Waden, you know, winning that job and going out as a freshman and being a starting wide receiver for you for a majority of the year, it's absolutely fantastic to get him back. And don't forget, guys, this guy was only a 3-star coming out of high school, and now he's starting as a freshman. Everybody's looking at these National Signing Day numbers and going, oh, well, why is he going after a 3-star when the forced Gus brought? No, guys, it's about talent. It's about talent. And these guys who might be little gems like Waden Charles, these guys are going to be the reason that your football team wins on any given Saturday. Waden Charles returning is absolutely massive for the Knights.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the base of that recruiting class here in our last segment because there are a lot of moving parts here this offseason, especially with the new portal rules that they put in the last few years. Kids have more autonomy than they've ever had about where they're going to play their next season of football. That whole you got to sit out a year rule really was wielded like a weapon by some coaches. So when a guy has a good season and he chooses to return to your program, I think it says a lot. I think it says a lot. So, you know, Waden Charles coming back. Now, you know, again, when you look at it, you know, his best game, probably Oklahoma State, 6 catches for 78 yards. No touchdowns on the year for Waden Charles, which is a little odd. But given the issues UCF had in the passing game, maybe not that odd.
No, I don't even think Dwayne Thomas Jr. had any touchdowns this year. So it doesn't surprise me that there wasn't a lot of touchdowns for those guys, you know, in the end zone. A lot of them were running plays. A lot of them were, you know, little pop plays to Dylan Wade. You know, the Knights didn't particularly get in the end zone all that much this year. And when it did happen, it was usually on the ground or to your big tight end.
Yeah, you know, the quarterback didn't have a ton of passing touchdowns, period. So obviously, if he's not passing for touchdowns, it's not like there were a bunch of passing touchdowns. He just didn't get any. There weren't a lot of passing touchdowns, period. So it was tough sledding. But what we saw this season was we saw flashes of what these guys could be. And as you mentioned, for a freshman, he went out and he did his part. And it was a strong, I think, freshman campaign in what was a rebuild year for UCF. Waden Charles choosing to return to the Knights and Scott Frost here for another year. He's got massive potential. And I think he'll be singled out as a potential breakout player for 2026 in the Big Ten. What do you think about Waden Charles is possibly a top 4 or 5 receiver in the league next year?
Wow. I mean, that's putting high standards up there for sure. You definitely have to assume that next year his role is going to increase even more with the departure of Marcus Burke, DJ Black, a couple of these other guys. Things look good in terms of retaining some of your wide receivers, notably Carl Jenkins, notably Dwayne Thomas, hopefully Day Farmer, because Day was, a guy that in the offseason looked really, really good. He looked phenomenal in spring ball, was definitely going to be your starting X or Y receiver. And then just a really unfortunate preseason injury that takes him out for the whole year. That guy has unlimited talent. He has a really high ceiling. And if he chooses to stay, that is going to be a guy that's also probably starting for you next year. So you're looking at a really strong receiving core between Waden, Day, and Dwayne Thomas. I'd like to get, a big, 50-50 threat. I think you have that with Dylan Wade. I think you're actually going to have that with Caden Peening, the freshman, this year. And, I think you're going to get more guys, in the portal. But you've got a really strong, talent-wise group coming back next year. They may not be the most experienced, but definitely elite talent coming back next year.
Let's get to our break. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about the guy who didn't throw all those touchdown passes that Waden Charles didn't catch. His name is Tavin Jackson, guys, and he's not coming back. We'll talk about him right after a quick word from our sponsors. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game and want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on anything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You can even combine all your bets into a same game parlay for a chance at an even bigger payout. This is my favorite thing to do. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers up to $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right, up to $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tavin Jackson is out. As I mentioned, a very up and down season for him. I appreciate his contribution to the Knights. However, you need a major upgrade at quarterback this offseason. We talked about the young Rocco Marriott who committed to the Knights, thus prompting Kane Archer to decommit. But if you're Scott Frost, you've got to remake this quarterback room, man, for another year. So Ja'Cory Brown returned. Like, I got to imagine he's going to move on. Right. Cam Fancher, I'm not sure if he's got the stuff that you need next year. You've got to move this thing forward. You came up one game short of making a bowl game at 5 wins. You had 4 wins prior, and you need to make a bowl game next year at all costs. And you need a quarterback. You need a trigger man. Former college coach told it to me this way this past offseason. He said, if you don't have a quarterback, you're cooked. Period. So Scott Frost has got to find a quarterback. What do you think about Tavin Jackson? They kind of elevated him from the backup that he was, and he didn't win the job in the offseason. They gave it to Cam Fancher. Injuries got him a chance. I thought he played well in spots. It just wasn't enough, man. Like the plays that needed to be made didn't always get made. There were throws that were missed, and the margin for error for this team this year was so small. I got to imagine they're going to have a similarly small margin for error next year unless we see a massive upgrade at every single position offensively in the portal. and especially offensive line. Tavin Jackson leaves. This is a hole I think UCF can fill, though.
Yeah, no, I think they can for sure. Taven's going on to his, fourth school in his fourth year of college football after previously being at Tennessee, Indiana here, and now his questionable future home. I could see Tavin being successful at a mid-tier G5 school. He is not a bad college football quarterback. He is not a bad college football quarterback, but he does not have, or at least did not show this year, what he needs to be a starter in a Power 5 program. And that is just what it is. It is very difficult. And to be a dual threat guy, especially in this Scott Frost kind of offense, you have to be just as good with your arm as you are with your legs. And in times it felt like he was better with his legs than he was with his arm. And at times it felt like he was not good at either. And so that's kind of the situation that you're in with this QB room. You've got two running quarterbacks, with Jacurri and Davi, and I'm not limiting those guys. I do believe that there's development that can be made, but Jacurri's had a couple of years, and I love the kid. He's super nice, and I think he's a really good guy. And I actually could almost see him staying at UCF just because of that, because he does love it here. And he does. People love Jacurri. But I truthfully believe for him to be successful in college football, he needs to go somewhere where his abilities can be utilized properly. I think that Davi has a little bit more potential for development. He's just a little younger. And so he might not be caught up in the habits that he has. I hope that he is able to develop, because he does have this point guard way of playing quarterback that is really interesting in the Scott Frost offense, as it has been before with Mackenzie Milton. But I think truthfully, Tavin Jackson going to the portal, Cam Fancher is going to go get a medical. You probably need to go get a Band-Aid guy for 1 year. And I do want to do at some point, maybe next episode, a segment about potentially some options in the transfer portal for quarterback. The portal doesn't officially open until January 2nd, but Tayven wasn't asked to come back, most likely. You got to think that Jacurri's most likely gone. Cam's going to get a medical and leave. So this quarterback room's wide open. Rocco, Marriott, who knows, man? I mean, this could be a crazy year.
Would Scott Frost dare to start a true freshman? I mean, he would have to play well. Is Rocco an early enrollee? Is he going to be in the spring?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. But Mike,
I know Ken Archer was going to be.
I want to note something very important that was said in a Scott Frost presser. He, and I'll summarize it for you guys, and I'm going to make sure not to take it out of context, but he was asked about this class and this 2026 class. And he said that it's not going to be worthwhile to get guys that he doesn't think are going to be impact players almost immediately. And I think it's very interesting that he went out and late made a push for Rocco, got Dante Carr as this development guy, and got like a small amount of guys, but in key areas that we needed. I don't know, Mike. I mean, does he dare to play Rocco? Maybe, but who knows, man? I mean, we've started 12 quarterbacks in the past 3 or 4 years.
That is a crazy thing. That sentence that just came out of your mouth. We've started 12 quarterbacks in like 2.5 years.
It's absurd.
That is absolutely absurd. Scott Frost is going to play the best guy, or he's going to play who he believes is the best guy. I like what we saw this season is they're not afraid to pivot from whatever their initial assessment or bias is, because once guys get in the game, you just don't know, right? You never know how it's going to go. We see your comments here live. We're going to get to a few of them here before we get to our next segment. But, man, I got to tell you, look, I appreciate Tavin Jackson. I thought he played with grit and toughness, and I think he gave UCF his all. It was a tough transition year for him to come in behind a line that was not very good if we're keeping it a buck. right? It
Yeah,
just wasn't
absolutely.
very good. Yeah, so these guys would have needed some more protection. Let's get to some of your comments. Chase4285 says, hopefully Rocco Marriott will outperform Tayven next year. Very low bar.
Well,
He has to trust.
assuming also that Rocco Marriott sees the field next year, I mean,
Yeah.
asking him to outperform him, I don't know, man.
Let's see here. Mackie 315 says Jacurri is not coming back. Cam is waiting to see if he's granted a red shirt, and Tavin wasn't asked to come back. Jacurri is going to Georgia Tech. Oh, wonder if he'll switch positions.
Maybe.
Did you see Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner went to Florida with John Summerall? For those of you who follow me, obviously I report on Auburn as well. I had reported that Faulkner would have come to Auburn under Summerall had they got the job. So interesting. But what I did know through my sources was Faulkner was not returning to Georgia Tech. So Jacurri is going to be going there under a new offensive coordinator. Obviously, Brent Key got extended there. It was a mad offseason of coaching switches, and some guys got promoted. I don't know if you saw, but Brian Hartline is going to USF. Alex Golish is now at Auburn. Lane Kiffin just threw a wrench in it for everybody. These kids have some decisions to make in terms of the situations that they're going into and whether or not those systems fit their skills or not. It'll be interesting to see if Jacurri gets used at all at Georgia Tech, if that's where he lands up. Chase 4285 says, get us to a bowl game, Rocco. Yeah. Our guy, Black Arican, says, when will UCF finally get a 5-star? The 5-star sweepstakes, man, it is money. It is primarily money now. I can honestly say that it's money. I want to take you back to Travis Hunter going to Jacksonville State. Prior to NIL, no shot he goes there. But he got $1 million to go play there for a year and then follow Deion to Colorado where he got millions of dollars. Come on, man. It's money. It comes down to money. But if Scott Frost can show that he can be the steward over what he has that we think he can be, then you'll see. I think you'll see the pocketbooks open a little bit. Let's see here. Mackie 315 comes back and says QB portal, Western Michigan, James Madison, and Old Dominion. Twizzy says any big wide receiver names leaving us.
I can chime in on that. Twizzy, not that we are currently aware of. It's actually surprisingly one of the few there's no whispers about that room right now, which is really nice. You'll probably see a couple D linemen leave, or maybe one or two that are a little bit buried on the depth chart that could have been really good if given time to develop. But no major wide receiver names right now. Obviously Waden Charles announces his return today. I would expect to hear Carl Jenkins announcing his return or just returning in general. And Day, from what we know, he is not transferring. He was basically guaranteed a starting job for this past year and got injured in spring ball. I think the only reason that they wouldn't stay is if you don't go out and get a good quarterback that can really throw the ball. If they go out and they get a guy that's unproven, you got 3 potentially unhappy wide receivers. So, I would for now, on the safe side, I don't think any big guys are leaving us.
Let's get to our break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about recruiting updates. National Signing Day is in the books. How did UCF do? Did they fill the needs that they needed to? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF. National Signing Day is in the books, James. UCF had some needs to fill. Talk to me, man, about how the Knights did on National Signing Day this year. Scott Frost's first full National Signing Day. Here's what I do. I give every coach a pass on the class coming in because you didn't have time to recruit. you just got off the plane and you've got to go salvage something of a class. And you end up hitting the portal hard for a lot of kids because these are relationships that were established over years. Trying to overcome that in days is sometimes not reasonable. So I tell fans, look, give Frost a pass on that first signing day, but this is potentially the first what we see the results of that relationship building process that Scott Frost has in. How do you think that the Knights did?
I think people are jumping out to quick conclusions when looking at this class. I am someone that is always going to look at the positives and negatives of what UCF is doing. And I'm going to give you the positives first. And that is the guys that you signed. The guys that you signed were pretty solid. A lot of people are looking at a lot of 3 stars and assuming that this is going to be just a not great class. It's not a big class, that's for sure. But
only 14 commits.
Yeah. But I also think that goes back to what Scott said in his presser today, which is he wants to get guys that are going to play and play almost immediately, freshman or sophomore year. And that's very important to Scott. There's no point in getting a kid, paying him $200,000, and then he goes and he leaves for some other school when he doesn't play. And I know that's the name of the game, but UCF is trying to find ways around that, which I think is actually not a bad idea. Starting off with Rocco, I mean, a great get. I truthfully believe that, I think him and Dante by composite records are the 2, or if not the highest 2 QBs to commit to us over the past couple years by composite records, which is really, really solid. That's what you want to see from Frost. You want to see talented quarterbacks. And I like the fact that he got one guy that he believes is, ready to go, and he got one development guy. They're both tall, big bodies with speed and big arms. And that's what you want to see. Both have the ability to scramble, get out of the pocket, throw on the run, that sort of deal. So that makes you happy for sure.
James Alhassan Idrisu, I hope I said that right. Maybe the crown jewel of this class, the 4-star defensive end. I'm interested to see how he does in Alex Grinch's defense. And then the next highest rated player on the board is Rocco Marriott. Now, you lost Kane Archer because of this commitment, essentially. And I really liked Kane. And I think he's going to be a really good quarterback for somebody. Hopefully they saw something in this kid that was worth losing Archer over, right? I mean, because you still got Dante Carr, but they were clear with Dante about the fact that he is a project. And they told him that. Now, if you missed that, we interviewed him right here at Locked On UCF, and he said part of what made him commit to the Knights was the honesty about where his game was at and what he needed to work on. And, look, man, if you're Dante, what you saw is it doesn't matter if you're the guy coming in. You could be the guy after one game. You could be the guy after one quarter. That's what we see at UCF. So I wouldn't be too worried about being on the bench to start the season, because if if it rains sideways that day, you could be the guy to end the season. And look, man, I think he's got the right stuff. You've got kids like the outside linebacker that I really like, Preston Hall, coming in. Arthur Lewis, the 4th, I think is going to be a really, really good. But I'm also looking here, and this is probably the most important, and I'm disappointed that they could not get another lineman in this class, offensive lineman in this class. Let me be specific. You got Amon Williams coming in at guard, and then you got a tackle in Keziah Charlton. In offensive line recruiting, especially after what we saw here, it's such a developmental position. You need to get these guys in as freshmen. You need to get them in your weight program and nutrition program. And you need to, for some kids, it takes a year to get your body physically ready to play at a Power 4 level. Because out of high school, most kids are not ready. And only the truly special ones can come in as true freshmen at offensive line and not get completely bulldozed. You could be talented, but you got to remember, when you make it to the Power 4 level, most of these guys are coming from schools where there may, and I mean really say may, be one other Division I prospect on their team. So most of the kids they're playing with, it's like a man amongst boys kind of thing where they're just like, again, with like Kane Archer. Dude, he's just throwing all over everybody. He's unstoppable, man. It's like having a Madden player at 99 while everybody else is rated 60. Then they get to the college level, and it's all those guys from their high schools now. It's a lot harder. So you've got to have offensive line. Again, I said it in the previous segment. A previous college coach told me, if you don't have a QB, you're cooked. Now, I would add that if you don't have good line play, you are equally as cooked. And if you don't have Cam Newton or Joe Burrow back there, you're going to have a hard time running any kind of offense. So I hope that what we see is they go to the portal and find some experienced linemen to come in while these guys develop. But I would have loved if they could have gotten a tackle or two more in this class, from high school.
Yeah, well, Keziah Charlton has been like one of the longest term UCF commitments. He's been committed for a very long time, which, besides the player, just goes as a proof of concept that Scott can go out, get a guy, keep him for that long, and get him to sign on National Signing Day, which is something that's very important and very difficult to do in this era of college football. Touching on some other people in that class, Kaj Baker at running back from Somerset. He's a little guy, but the dude is lightning. They call him Nitro, which is phenomenal because our mascot is Nitro. So, I mean, that's fun. That's like, what a great combo there. The kid is lightning speed. You've got a lot, like Arthur Lewis is a bruiser. Like he's an agile bruiser from Bartram Trail, which is around where I grew up. So I know these schools. Noah Mercer was a late D lineman flip from USF after the coaching change there. He has phenomenal film at 6'5", 240. That's a guy that has the intangibles. Now you make him even better. Matthew Ochapenti is another guy at linebacker from Don Bosco Prep, great high school that produces a lot of good football players. There's a lot of potential in this class, which I think is the most important thing. You want there to be potential because you want to see that your coaches can develop guys, because, just putting it plainly, UCF does not have the resources that other schools have. UCF is the youngest school in the Power 5 by decades. You are playing catch up. So you need your guys to make sure that they can develop players faster and they can go find the gems in the portal, like Dwayne Thomas Jr., like Dylan Wade, that can go out and make big plays for you. And then when they do, make sure you retain them because of the culture. And I think that is the plan for UCF. And so I see this comment: when's the first 5-star going to play at UCF? When we get billionaire boosters is a great answer, but it is once the culture has reached its peak. Once everyone in the football, facility is on the same page about wanting to win, that is when you get a 5-star to come in. Because I will say 5-stars have committed to smaller schools, to different schools with less resources than UCF. But it's about the culture and it's about needing to win. UCF, 2 seasons under 500. You can't expect a guy to come save you. You got to prove that you can do it without him first.
I agree. Look, I mean, if you're UCF, you got to play the long game. You have to play the long game here because you're not going to catch up to Texas Tech and BYU, in Arizona State and the teams at the top of the Big 12 in one offseason. This is a multiple offseason kind of rebuild where every year you have to make progress toward catching them. And then hopefully what happens is during that process, you go to the portal and you find that gangbusters all-in player. And fortunately now you are in the Big 12. So when you have that good season, it will pay off for those players and they can go to the college football playoff. I mean, right? I think we're going to see 2 Big 12 teams in this playoff. Only one made it. It was Arizona State last year. They were picked to finish dead last in the conference last year. They won the whole damn thing. And boy, did they give Texas a run for their money. UCF 2017 can happen again. I'm just saying. And a lot of people thought it was fluky. And then they went and they beat the living snot out of Auburn in that ball game. I have the commemorative belt here. That game, yeah, it's out of reach right now. I want to stand up, bro, but I have the commemorative belt. If you've never watched the show before, I showed it off here. UCF just taking Auburn to task. It was a team that wanted it more, and they had something to prove. And I wonder if Scott Frost can create that thing within his team this offseason where it's like, look, man, everybody's counting us out. Nobody thinks that we've got what it takes. And we're going to go and we're going to work our butts off this offseason to make sure every team that walks into the bounce house or sees us walk through their doors understands that they're in for 60 minutes of hell. That's what it's got to be, man. A former, I try not to name people, a former football operations guy for a Power 4 program said it to me this way. He said, Mike, it's 1,000 hours of work from January to July for 40 hours of football in the fall.
It's insane. It is the payoff though is you have to work so hard in those 1,000 hours. And here's the thing, you can work hard and you can be 4-8. You can work your tail off and be 3-9. But it is about when it comes down to those 60 minutes in those, 12 games that you get, it is about execution. It is about the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes. So it's got to be a whole balanced effort for UCF this offseason.
Yeah, you need dudes. And there's no way around it. Josh Pate is a good friend of mine, and he said this. He's like, look, man, you're not going to outdevelop Kirby Smart. You're just not. Because he's got 5 stars and he can develop. And when you put those two things together, what you get is you get Nick Saban in Alabama. Right? But and when you when you can do one, but maybe not the other, you get Lane Kiffin. Really good, but somehow always on the outside looking in. Side note, screw that dude, right? Like, oh my goodness. What a
bad situation there.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Ole Miss, but not for their fans because they're terrible. Look, we're going to get out of here, but this is going to be a really great offseason, I think, for us to cover here, James. One comment I did want to get to before we got out of here. Our guy, Vivid Psychosis, says, can someone please tell UCF Twitter this? They're losing their minds. Oh, my God, Frost thinks college football is broken, and assuming that means he is saying we won't get players or be good. Look, I think that he thinks that the college football that we knew is over with. It literally caused Saban to retire. He said, when I found out my messaging no longer resonated, I knew it was time to hang it up. And so he got out of here before he damaged his legacy, James, trying to keep up with a system that, and this was the dude whose superpower was his ability to be able to evolve to what college football was. We saw it. 3 yards in a cloud of dust football. That's how they won their first couple of championships. And then after Cam Newton and all this stuff, he was like, you know what? We need an offensive revolution. And then he hired Lane Kiffin. And as soon as he did that, I was like, damn, he gets it. We're screwed.
Yeah.
We need a coach who gets it. We need a coach who gets it. So let's go on and get out of here. I appreciate you for joining me on today's show. I appreciate all the commenters for jumping in here on a Wednesday night live. Normally, we would do an availability report live, but season's over for UCF. So There will be no more availability reports again until next fall, but there will be a lot of reports here. Again, if you're just subscribing to the channel, do us a favor, share this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and hit the comment section after the video. Let us know what you think about Waden returning, about Tayven going, and about this recruiting class. Did they accomplish their goals? We want to hear from you always right here on Locked On UCF. Also, tell somebody else to subscribe to the channel. We are on a mission to be the #1 UCF podcast by a long shot. You guys got us to 1,000 subs this season, but we want 2,000, and then we want 3,000, and then we want to do something that's never been done in this space before, which is 10,000 subscriptions here at Locked On UCF. We're going to work hard to give you that content. Also, if you have not followed the channel through the offseason, this channel will cover basketball. They look pretty decent on the basketball court so far this season, so I don't want to jinx it. I know football is important, but I think it's important to cover what they're doing on the basketball side as well, too. We're going to do that here every single day this offseason. Let's go on and get out of here, James. I want to thank everybody for making us your first listen of every single day. So do it again right here on Locked On UCF.